Joining me now to talk about the end of at least half of the school year in December, Dr. Eugene Schmidt is back with me, Superintendent of Schools, of course, for the Farmington Municipal School District. Dr. Schmidt, good morning. Good to see you and have you here with us this morning.
Scott, good morning and welcome to all our listeners from my office at home.
There you go. Good to see you, safe and sound at your home office, as it were. And so we've got, I know, a lot of things to talk about. There are a lot of things that may be changing in the future, of course, as the vaccine rolls out for COVID. I know you're in conversations all the time about returning to learn and watching the numbers across our state and things along that line. So without much further ado, let's get to it and kind of talk a little bit about some of the things that has been happening, at least so far this school year, right?
Yes, yeah, we've got a lot to talk about today, and just to kind of tease your listening audience, as I think back about 2020 and all the things that have happened both to our school and for our community, I just kept thinking about the word Zoom.
Right.
Zoom wasn't part of our lexicon a year ago, and now it's become a verb. It's a noun, and we're all Zooming, and just even before March 13th, people would have said, What's a Zoom? And so just for all those Zoomers out there, that's one more sign that we are doing things differently as we look back in 2020.
Very true. Well, and I know, I don't know about you, but I know I didn't buy any stock in Zoom, and I should have back in March, knowing what we know now. But be that as it may,
yes. So I laugh because I used to go fishing, and now we don't fish.
No.
In the new vernacular, so.
That's true. Very true. Well, today we want to talk a little bit about what has happened over 2020, and then give some kudos to your staff and the district. And then get a little bit into, again, getting to green. Of course, the state is now on its three-colored kind of system now of how things open or don't, and then some other things that we'll be talking about, too, this morning. So that's kind of the look ahead, everybody, for what we're going to be talking about with Dr. Schmidt as we wrap up, as I mentioned, this half of the school year. So let's talk a little bit about things so far, Dr. Schmidt. And, of course, as you and I were talking this just before we came on the air, it's been 9 months since a lot of your students have seen the inside of a classroom. A lot of your teachers have seen a student in person, and even you seeing a student in person. So that's kind of where we are these days, right?
Yes, as people go through their life experiences, there are moments that just become deeply embedded. And for example, I've been around long enough. I remember the day that President Kennedy was shot in Dallas, or when the first, Jaeger broke the sound barrier. There are moments when you just remember. And March 13th, probably for many of our students, will be a day that they remember a good portion of their lives, because, we're literally in a school board meeting and we're getting a call from the public education department, said, time for you all to go home. And we
right.
thought, okay, well, we'll go home for a couple of weeks. No, you're going to go home for 9 months and maybe longer. And so it is, as we look back over this year, part of that reflection is admiration for our students, staff, parents, and our community that within just a short amount of time, learn to do things differently. Takeout at restaurants became, drive-by deliveries, or for school, at-home learning. And it is a credit to our teachers and staff, who I celebrate this week before Christmas, if I can say that we look back and we say thanks, because you are an amazing bunch of people that we wouldn't be in this educational new world without really just incredible work by our teachers and our families and school leaders. So just first thing is, you're adaptable, you're resilient, you've shown that we can reinvent within days and just get things done. So that's a big thank you. And again, looking back, Who would have thought a year ago we'd be talking about a spring semester that is behind us now in 2020, that we began to look at pass and no credits just as a way to, how do you get through those last, what amounted to 45 days of school. And while now in the new world, this semester, students will get grades, attendance will count. There was a time looking back when, we just were more focused on social emotional needs of kids. And now we are worrying about social emotional as well as the academics. But again, looking back, a year ago, who would have thought something called a virtual graduation would be possible? And while I know that kids love their drive-through parades and they picked up diplomas and, caps and gowns and things, it still isn't quite the same as being in Hutchinson Stadium or the backside of San Juan College when we do graduations in person. But it shows, again, the adaptability of our schools and our community to say, okay, if I can't do it in person, what can I do? I can do virtual. And Scott, it turns out a lot of people liked it. This is my 6th year as the superintendent of Farmington Schools, and I know that we always loved to race the rain before graduation was over in Hutchinson Stadium,
well, I know for some out of town,
we will get back there someday.
Yes, and I know for some out of town relatives and grandparents, I think they really enjoyed the virtual ceremonies that were held this year. It's not the same thing as getting a nice rained on at Hutchinson Stadium or Ricketts Park, pardon me, but it still has some positives to it. So, but as you mentioned, everybody adapted, and this is how it went this year. So, very true. You mentioned grading, Dr. Schmidt, and I want to ask you a bit about fall grading because that is still a little bit different, is it not? We're not certainly back to a normal grading scheme for your students, are we?
Yes, and I appreciate that because we are looking at this semester and next semester. There will be grades, but the grading scale system has been adjusted for my kids in 9 through 12. Kids in grades K through 8, this is pretty standard practice for them, that a grading scale begins at 50 rather than 0. In the traditional grading scale that you and I probably grew up with, Scott, you had 59 ways to fail.
Right.
Because you got to get a 60 to pass. In the new system that we're rolling out to try and condense the bottom, the grading scale begins at 50 instead of 0. So that gives us a chance to help kids visualize being successful in a time when we can't do in person and not oftentimes even online because of occasionally undependable internet access or the realization that a lot of our kids have gone to work to help their families. And so we're looking at one more tool in the toolbox to help kids by shrinking the bottom closer to the top, because the difference between an A and a B is 10 points. Why can't the difference between a no credit fail or a D be 10 points as opposed to 59? So we're experimenting, piloting, trying a different way to help our high school students realize success in this time of unusuality. So thank you for giving me a chance to share that. And
you bet.
As parents, your grades should be coming out very shortly. It's almost Christmas. I hope that Christmas present arrives with passing scores. But we did try to shrink the bottom to make it more equal to the D level, C level, B, and then finally the A. And for those kids that were always the high achievers, you're going to continue to be high achievers. It is that group at the bottom, and in this age of online learning, where it's harder for some kids to get access, we need to do all we can to help the bottom. And
that's part of that decision. Some of the other things I wanted to ask you about and have you comment on, Dr. Schmidt, is some of the other things from this past year. Some of the pre-K 5 and K-12 Jumpstart program that was introduced this past fall. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So in an effort to return to learn, we as a district submitted 3 plans to the Public Education Department. The first 2 were denied, but we finally settled on an agreed plan that we could bring back pre-K kids. And so again, I probably should have put on this looking back over 2020. You as a family have had to decide, do I want in-person or at home? And so of our 11,000 kids, probably about 5,400 chose that they would prefer in-person as opposed to at home. And in that were about 2,200 pre-K kids. And so when we talk about, our proposal to the Public Education Department was accepted to let kids come back who preferred to learn in person. It didn't happen till after Labor Day, but up through almost the end of October, we had in-person learning for those kids that chose to do that. We also had what we call the K-12 Jumpstart. And this was for our most at-risk special ed kids, our exceptional needs kids, that in contrast to the pre-K that got to come back in groups of 10 to 12, maybe 15, the Jumpstart kids came back in pods of 4, maybe 1 to 1, 1 to 5. And so that was a difference, and we have shifted to remote for those kids during this holiday break. It is our intent to bring those kids back, and we're having active conversations with the Public Education Department to do that after Martin Luther King Day in January. So I probably should have put, as you think about when things are different, things that are different, we don't have snow days in this new online world. And I thought about that a lot because I've actually received emails from parents saying, we want our snow days back.
Right.
And it's become kind of a national conversation. And I won't name the soup company that you and I probably grew up eating canned soup, but there actually was the National Soup Company is calling for a return to snow days.
Interesting.
As I thought that's really interesting. Even a national reputable company that makes canned soup wants to bring back snow days so you can have your tomato soup, if I don't give the name of the company away. But
that's okay. But there's a lot that make good tomato soup, and there's nothing better on a snow day, I'll tell you that. That's for sure. You're right. And talk a little bit about, I know, the other concern that parents have and students have and you have and your teachers and coaches are about missing out on sports and missing out on, I would say, a shout out to the drama kids and the choir kids. Yes. and some of the band kids. Some of those extracurricular things are certainly kind of on pause for at least half the year and maybe a bit longer, right?
Yes, and I appreciate that because that's probably been one of the hardest things that you can do some learning online, but it's hard to play orchestra cello.
Right.
It's really sad when we grew up waiting for your chance to play football or soccer and now not be able to do that. And so when we look back at not only the 9 months, but we worry about the several months to come, we miss sports, we miss academics and the athletics that go or the activities that go with it. And I was talking to Daniel Fair, who runs our fine arts program. It is a credit to the orchestra, choir, band teachers. I look at our lieutenant colonels in the JROTC programs who are doing virtual shooting matches. It's just a different kind of year that we try to provide the activities that we can. And I probably will tease our coaches and say, okay, you can't have a virtual sport unless you have a virtual bus ride.
Right. True.
But we do miss the sports, the activities, because for many students, that's the reason they go to school. They want to be with their friends. They want to participate in those activities they've been waiting forever to do. And those moments are lost. And it saddens me that, what looks to be the shrinking sports season, that may begin after Labor Day or even 1st of February, extend into the summer. But I'm still hopeful that kids will have some kind of experience that we need and we miss so much.
Very true. Well, and again, it's the New Mexico Activities Association that's been doing a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to trying to schedule these things and follow some of the state COVID safe practices and all the guidelines. And of course, that's kind of where we are. The other thing I think we've talked about briefly, but is this other topic of the concern for lost learning. And I think we know and we can see, and I think we're seeing it and hearing it statewide or nationwide, that there are just some students that aren't performing as well learning virtually or remotely as they had done in the classroom. And that's got to be a struggle for the student and for their family probably to figure out how to help and what can we do.
Yes, and so I appreciate that from the standpoint of there is a genuine concern that our teachers are doing amazing work in a most difficult situation. And I know that our parents are working hard to provide study places, support for their children, but there is a concern for what are we losing in learning time. I was talking to a friend, Dr. Cleveland out of Rio Rancho, and we were lamenting that it may well go back to the Depression years of the 1930s to maybe understand a comparable time of learning loss, where literally in the Depression years, kids didn't get to go to school. Now kids can go to school, but it is not with all of the tools and things that we might have used as an in-person learning situation. So this may be, if not a 3 to 5 or a decade, it might be a lifelong thing. And again, I know that our teachers are trying, our parents are great educational partners, our kids are working hard, but there is that genuine concern. And so we'll be looking in the future over these next few years, how do you assess the 4th grade critical content that wasn't learned? How do we move that into a 5th grade learning that content while we have the learning recovery going back for the previous year? Because as you learned in your schooling, Scott, all learning seems to spiral up. You just don't get to jump into the middle of something without not having that background knowledge, without having some difficulty. So, I use the example of an Econ 201 class I took in graduate school. I'd never taken any econ before. And I'm thinking, man, there's a lot of stuff that the other kids in my class knew before I took that. And so I can understand the concern for, I'm going into the 9th grade next year. Man, I got to know a lot. And so we as a district will be looking for ways to assess and understand what learning content wasn't picked up or gained, do what we can to provide that learning or credit recovery to make it up, in the hopes that by the time our students are graduating, they are ready for that college and career.
Sure. And of course, to be clear though, this is happening worldwide, isn't it? I mean, aren't we seeing these same learning concerns from schools and educators around the world? I mean, every student I think is suffering. Are they not, or is it just something happening in this country?
No, and that's a great effort to help our community understand the importance of what Farmington, San Juan County, New Mexico, the U.S., the world, like you, who probably have your radio personality friends throughout the world. I have superintendent friends that I contact with regularity across the state and country, and it is. And so it's interesting. For example, the superintendent, Shelby County, Memphis, Tennessee, is a friend, and we were talking already. They're looking at not coming back in January, but maybe pushing it back to March. I have friends from San Bernardino County in California looking at, they're not ready yet. And while I'm saying I think Farmington is ready, there's a lot of conversations going on nationally that, what do we do? What is best for kids? What is best for our staff? What is best for the safety of all? And so it's a trying time, to be a decision maker as to what is best. But Farmington, as I understand it, wants to get our kids back in school. And so that is the message that we're sending to the Public Education Department and the Governor's Office.
Very good. My guest this morning, Dr. Eugene Schmidt, is with me. He is the Superintendent of Schools, of course, with the Farmington Municipal School District. And Dr. Schmidt will change gears just a little bit to talk about some positive things, too, for the district in 2020, some of the awards that you have received on behalf of your staff and accomplishments of the district. I want to kind of highlight those briefly as we are kind of running short on time, and there's a lot more to talk about, but we're showing on the screen just some of the many accolades that came your way.
Yes, and I would say that it's a credit to a school system that even in time of COVID positives and trying to do remote learning, that we have the School Board of the Year. We know that 2 years ago we were a national one, distinguished school, Ladera del Norte, a blue ribbon school. Everybody has a fondness for Suzanne Holman, who is a state finalist for Teacher of the Year. We are a best communities for music. So all of those things are just a credit to a school that even in time of remote learning, really positive things are happening.
Very good. Well, congratulations again. We've talked about many of those things and actually talked to some of the folks honored. Suzanne Holman, I remember, was on this program. Yes. So thank you for bringing her on so we could tell her in person. Congratulations. So again, great accomplishments, and always great to be able to highlight those. Some of the other things that we can mention too of the other awards at one of your staff members at Bluffview, right?
Yes, and these are actually awards that, as we look to the future, these will be presented in January, but it's just a wonderful story that the New Mexico music people give out 8 state awards and we have 4. It just speaks well that, so how do you show that you love music, the arts? Well, it's through the professionalism and I all of these people are wonderful, but Les Leach, you're out there, buddy. You are one of the ones that got this going for us. And he is retired, but it's wonderful that even after you retire, people can reach back and say, we remember the work that you did to build this legacy of fine arts in our community. So Kelly Yost, Les Leach, Monica Leeming, they're just a bunch of folks that have done wonderful things.
Very true. A lot of talent on that screen right there, I would say. So congratulations once again to them. And so as we move forward, Dr. Schmidt, of looking at the spring and how to get those doors open, how to get those students back in the classroom, you have to follow, of course, the directives from the Public Education Department. They are talking with the Governor's Office and the state health folks about these COVID-safe practices. And as I think we mentioned earlier, the state is now under this 3-tiered color coding system, county by county, which I think is a positive. It's not just the state is either open or closed. They're going to go county by county, which would help if our area is not having a severe outbreak. We may be able to reopen faster than, say, Albuquerque or Las Cruces or some other parts of our state. And so I think that is a positive change in some of these ways to measure just how bad the COVID infection is in any given area. But that is something that you're looking at as well, is helping the schools to reopen as the counties move from red, where we are now, to yellow to green.
Yes, and so I'm gonna steal your words. I'm going to rename the proposal that we send to the Public Education Department, get our doors open,
okay,
as opposed to getting to COVID green, because the state does use a yellow, red, green system as a way of, can you open your restaurant? Can you open your school? I like to just get our doors open. And so we will be submitting a plan to the Public Education Department to bring back our pre-K and our Jump Start kids. But as importantly, I'm going to get our 12th graders back into school, even if I have to begin with those who are most at risk. So, one one needs to help those who need the help the most. And so I'll be looking at, can I get my seniors back first? Can I then look at maybe some kind of career and technical education? Can I get kids who are having those social emotional needs back in school? So we'll be sharing with our public over the Christmas break a plan that we're sending to the public education department that says, here's how I think we can bring the seniors back. Here's my juniors, sophomores, freshmen. Here's how I think I can bring back the middle school in some safe way. Again, for those kids that choose to do that, because some kids have chosen to learn from home. But I choose to believe there's a pathway to get kids back. And if I can get kids back, then that creates a pathway for sports to follow. So whether it be activities, sports, hang with us. Let's make this our New Year's resolution to get kids back in school. So my resolution, Scott, using your doors, is get our doors open.
There you go. Well, and hopefully they can. And I'm looking at this list of things on the screen, Dr. Schmidt. And again, it's all about the positivity rates and the rate of the spread. And so at 5% positivity, which we are not there now, but if we could get there, the idea would be that you could possibly have an in-person graduation ceremony at the end of the school year, which would be a great thing for your students.
Yes, I had met with County Executive Mike Stark last week, City Mayor Nate and City Manager Rob Mason. We want to make this a county-wide thing. So if you are out there over this Christmas break, help us by following all of those social guidelines, and that by lowering the positivity rates, I think is like 10 per 100,000 or something per rate. We can figure out a way to get our school doors open. If we can get our school doors open, then we can get our kids back on the sports fields as well.
That's true. Very true. And just a couple of minutes remaining, Dr. Schmidt, this morning, but I know, part of this that helps with these numbers is the testing, right? To know just where the outbreaks are. And if someone is testing, positive, that helps to kind of keep the numbers from exploding as well. If we're getting a lot of positive tests and someone tests negative, that would be a good thing. So you're talking about this vault testing, and this is something that's relatively new?
Yes, and so this is brand new to public education. School staff can do a COVID test at home. In fact, I've ordered the kit and have done this.
Interesting.
But it's a pretty simple process. You have delivered to your home this test kit. You spit in a tube, you send it back, and 3 days later you know if you are COVID negative or positive. But we believe that fast forwarding the test results will be a reason for the public education department and the Department of Health to have greater confidence that we are tracking COVID at almost a real-time moment. So that would be a motivation for, say, let us bring our kids back. We're testing every day.
Right, and that would be maybe helpful to show the state what the numbers are and be fairly accurate about that. And final notes this morning, Dr. Schmidt, would be 2021. I think we talked about a lot of these things already, but I know the big push to try to get your doors open, to return to learn and have it level green throughout the county, and that is a county-wide effort. You're absolutely right about that.
Yes.
And, of course, the immunizations, the vaccine has been delivered just last week at the hospital. And so as that pushes out to more and more of the population, that may also help get the positivity rate down in our community, correct?
Yes, and in addition to that, Scott, my staff will be interested in knowing that we're trying to work with our legislators and the governor's office to have teachers declared essential workers. I'm trying to get my teachers moved up in the line so that we will feel, as I ask them to return to the classroom, that they are better prepared health-wise. So that is one of my immediate look-aheads as we try to return to learn. Let's get my staff as essential learners, get that vaccination taken care of, and get teachers back in the classroom. Looking well beyond that, though, is a general obligation bond. Scott, our community loves our schools, and they show that love through their support for bonds. And so we'll be talking to our community about a bond in November of 2021.
Okay. Well, we'll look forward to having that conversation with you. And the other notes on the screen right now, Dr. Schmidt, is that, and I think we can see it, that things are going to get better. We talked last week that it's nearly not going to happen at the stroke of midnight on December 31st, but 2021 portends to be a much better year than 2020 for everyone, and we just need to kind of keep our eye on the ball, to have a sports analogy there. So I hope you and your family have a very safe holiday, Dr. Schmidt, and happy holidays. Merry Christmas to you. And again, as always, thank you for spending your time with me this week.
And let me share that I wish I'd worn my ugly Christmas sweater, but,
right.
I do want to wish you all a Merry Christmas, and it is going to get better.
Good advice, and that's very true. Thank you, Dr. Schmidt, Dr. Eugene Schmidt from Farmington Schools, my guest this morning here on KSJE.